Random Fandom Chats. I'm Tandra.
I'm Dee Dee.
This is Annabeth, and this is our special guest, Kathleen. We're deviating from our regular format to do a special on cosplay. This is our third of a three-part special, and this one's specifically going to be focusing on props.
If you haven't checked out the other two in this series, make sure to check those out. And like you said, today we're going to be talking about props. And I kind of want to start on your shield, Katie, because I think that is just really cool.
It's the newest one she's been making.
I finished this last night. This is for Lady Sif from Thor, from the movies.
It lifted up so you can see.
Here, you hold that. Yeah. So I finished this last night at 3 o'clock in the morning after I got off work. What exactly do you want me to say?
Well, tell a bit about the process of how you went about making it.
Okay, it's EVA foam, thermoplastic, a little bit of shelf liner, lots and lots of contact cement, and paint. And hot glue, which I found to be a not good thing to use with thermoplastics, but that's another story.
Well, that's good to know. That's a good thing to know. So you've put a lot of hours into this so far.
Yes, I've put approximately 24 hours just into this shield. So literally a whole day of just working on this shield since November. And it's now the beginning of March. So that's quite a lot of time I've spent just on this shield. Mm-hmm. Now I've worked on other things too,
right. Right. Well, like for instance, you're still in the middle of the process of working on these.
These are not done. These are gauntlets for the same costume, and that's just so far EVA foam and thermoplastic. Both of these have Thibra as the thermoplastic, which you can exclusively get at ardawigs.com. This is really the first time I'm dealing with thermoplastics. It's an experience. It's a learning curve. Thibra especially, it acts a lot like clay, which is surprising and useful at times, especially because, as you can see, this is highly detailed. This is all EVA foam underneath the plastic that I had to mold the plastic over, and I used sculpting tools to get down into these little crevices. And I mean, there's some parts about this that I'm not 100% happy with because I used hot glue and.
Well, this is the first time you're making something quite this complicated.
Yes, and the shield was the first thing I used the Thibra on, which I probably should have practiced first, but I'm impatient.
Yeah.
So, I there's some things about how I did this that I'm not 100% happy with, but it's a learning experience.
Yeah.
And I'm getting there. I'm mostly happy with how this has turned out. It looks really good in my opinion, and I'm excited to wear it in July.
Mm-hmm. Now that is one thing, you have been really good with some of the props we've used over the years with various things.
She is the natural at the sewing,
and you're the natural at the props.
I'm the natural at the props.
So let's search some of the other props that she's kind of worked on over the years.
This was probably the first thing I made. It was for her Connor costume back there. This is literally the stuff that you put in your car in your window, that metallic-y stuff. That's what the tomahawk is made out of, and duct tape around the edges. And the stick, I think, is actually from a rubber mallet from the Dollar Tree. And then she decorated it herself.
Yeah, but got a little feather from my scrap.
But it literally costed me like $2 to make this.
Right, and it made the costume, it just kind of set it off a little bit.
She's actually gotten a lot of compliments on it, which is kind of hilarious considering what it's made out of.
It's just something you kind of whip together, one day.
Took me a couple hours at most.
Now another thing I thought was very cool, we had a friend who wanted to do something from Warehouse 13.
Which at the time I had never seen.
Which you've now seen it all.
Yes, I have.
And so you kind of looked at what, you had pictures of what he wanted.
I found reference pictures.
This is called
A Farnsworth.
And it's from Warehouse 13. It's their communications device that they use to talk to each other. Mm-hmm. And basically, all you did was you found this tin. It's like a pencil holder or something.
It's a pencil case, a Disney pencil case from Hobby Lobby.
And then you painted it with the color of paint that you wanted to use for it. And they're supposed to be kind of older, so you kind of made it look beat up a little bit. Now, these parts down here are from an old sewing machine.
Well, this one isn't. That's actually the nipple from Pacifier.
So there you go, a little tiny pacifier.
These are sewing machine parts.
And then this is just a little...
It's like an aquarium.
An aquarium.
And then this was like a magnifying glass.
That you painted. We had an old sewing machine that didn't work anymore, and we pulled off some bits and pieces and parts of it because we thought they'd be useful, and it turned out they were. And so I think it's a very cool looking.
Again, I think this costed me maybe $15 or $20 to make
At the most.
And that was technically my first commission. He paid me to make this. So, yeah.
Right.
This was probably only the second or third prop I really kind of made.
Now, another thing you worked on or helped work on was the guns. Blasters. Now, that was
for Sabine.
It was, a Sabine costume from Star Wars. And those are made out of
insulation.
It's very cool what you can find at places like Lowe's and Menards to be useful for cosplay.
Oh, yeah.
Insulation, she actually also used insulation for this. You can get a really large piece of insulation.
For like $17.
Yeah, sometimes even $13, $14.
We still have pieces of this insulation down in our basement. This is what I made this and the guns out of.
And it was like a $15 piece of insulation. And now she's had to paint it. But it's very cool. This is from Sango.
From Inuyasha.
From Inuyasha. And so she cut it out. It's very lightweight, so it's easy to carry around.
Oh, yes. Lightweight is very key when having large props.
It is. It very much is. And so it's very useful. Now, another thing we did at Lowe's, and this is like the only piece I've ever made because the only costume I ever really want's a Jedi costume. This is actually a piece of from the plumbing department. We took one end and we screwed it on the other end. I used an old button that we had to make the little clip here. I'm still not quite finished with it. I don't like the ridges here, so I'm going to manage to cover those up a little bit.
EVA foam.
We'll do something with it. And then I just, I want to be able to hook it on a belt so it just, hangs from my costume. So I found some old wire.
You've had that for like 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah, I haven't quite finished the costume yet, so I just have the prop. But this was like $6-7, and
you've not done much work to it.
And I didn't have to do really anything to it, and it's pretty cool looking little lightsaber.
It looks like a lightsaber.
And so it'll hang. So sometimes you can, find things and repurpose them for what you want to use them for. Now, another thing that you did. Now, this took you out.
Now, this was actually one of the very first things prop-wise that I did, and it was very time-consuming, and I'm actually pretty proud of it because, as we stated before, I'm a lot more of the sewer. I don't do a lot of props, but I did this by myself. What I did is I just looked at several people who did Boba Fett helmets. I looked at their different techniques, and I kind of just pieced together what I thought would be the best technique from all of those. A lot of people like using fiberglass to try and make these, which I just did not want to mess with, especially how newbie I was at it. I used a lot of poster board for this because it was lightweight and cheap. And I found a pattern for the dome online, I think on Instructables. I'll try to find that for you guys. And you just cut it down to the shape you need to and fold the pieces in, cover them in lightweight spackling to make sure it all stays, and it also gives it a little bit more of a hard exterior. Then you just prime and paint it. And then, again, these are just poster board. I just kind of cut them to the shape I needed to and glued them on.
Now, the visor is kind of an interesting thing. We had found some very, very large sheets of clear plastic at a yard sale for like $1. They were very thin, flexible plastic sheets.
Yeah, like the kind of things you'd see on like the inside, like action figures and stuff like that.
Yeah. I have no clue why these people had it,
but they were selling them for 25 cents a sheet, so we bought a bunch. And I just cut a little piece of that. Actually, I took window tinting film to give it the tinted look, and then just glued it on the inside.
Right, now show me the inside of what that looks like, so I can get an idea of some of the materials that you used.
Like I said, I use a lot of old cereal boxes because we had some cereal boxes laying around, so I used a lot of those, and then just went and bought poster board for any bigger pieces that I need.
And it's like there's a hat in there.
Yeah, I took a old hat that I got for $1 at a flea market, I think, and just taped it inside so it would sit a little bit more comfortably on my head, because having your head rub up against, cardboard and lightweight spackling is kind of uncomfortable, so I just kind of taped that on the inside to make it sit a little bit better.
And generally, something like that, you didn't want to wear a bunch anyway, other than for pictures.
Right, I put it on for pictures, but a lot of times
you just carried it around.
I can see out of it. It's just my field of vision is a little bit restricted, and I can't hear very well in it. So a lot of times I just carry it around under my arm. But
now we were talking about some different materials and things that you use, and some of these are kind of dangerous. So there are probably some
safety precautions.
One real important one, because a lot of these have paint. A lot of them have,
insulation.
If you're going to use insulation foam, always use a respirator.
Yes.
This is one of the best respirators we found. It's made by 3M. We think it's good for both fumes and for particles. Basically, it's really cool. You've got the base piece, and then you have the filters on the side that are
Those just
replaceable.
pop off.
They pop off. They're replaceable. This is a little bit pricey. They're like $50-$60.
But honestly, your health is more important.
Right.
So
And once you have it, you have it.
Right,
And
all you
you'll
have to do is buy the refills of these, and those are pretty
I
inexpensive.
think they're like $10 or $15.
I've not actually looked, but that sounds about right.
But
Right.
those will last you.
They
for a
last-
little
they
while.
last
a good long while.
Right.
Right.
And for almost any materials that you use, try to use a well ventilated space and make sure you use
Garages,
a
if you
restroom.
can.
Yeah, like for this,
Windows open would be
I
useful.
used a lot of contact cement. You don't need a respirator for that, but you definitely want a well ventilated area. That stuff stinks to high heaven. It is a bad smell and it lingers. So I have a room at my house that I'm lucky enough to be able to use, and it attaches to my garage through the windows. So I have my garage door open and my windows open, and it
Try to get some
still
of that
stinks.
Right. And of course, with paint and all that, spray paints and all.
Yeah, you want to do that outside.
Yeah,
if you
definitely.
can, definitely. But there's some other safety things. Now, there's some other useful materials that you can get that would be useful. Cutting mats and mats that you used for silicone.
Self-healing cutting mats are wonderful for both sewing and for prop making. I got one for Christmas from these guys. It's been amazing. Silicone mats like you would find for baking in the biggest sizes you can possibly find,
Which are a little hard to find, but they can be found.
are fantastic for working with thermoplastics, especially Thibra, because Thibra wants to stick to everything. So silicone is fantastic for working with thermoplastics. It doesn't stick to it, so you're not going to mess up whatever you're working on.
Plus, it's great for, up to, since it's silicone, it's good for
It's like 450
degrees or something. So any heat that you have on it, it's not going to
And
damage
most
it.
thermoplastics start their melting point or whatever is like 200 or less.
Right. Some other things that you use is hair dryers to get your heat.
Yes.
For molding.
I don't use a hairdryer for the heat. Heat guns. Like the cheap Wagner ones that are yellow that almost every cosplayer has.
Yeah.
Right.
They're like $20 at Lowe's. You can get them relatively cheap. You guys got us one for Christmas a few years ago. That's honestly how I've gotten a lot of my cosplays.
Yeah, get your family members to buy this stuff for you.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, give them a detailed list, even if they're not cosplayers. If you give them
they
a
can find
detailed
it.
list, they can buy it for you. But, like, Thibra especially takes a long time to cool down. And you want it to be slightly cooled to be able to work with it, to sculpt it. So I use the heat gun to melt it, and then I use the hairdryer on the cold setting to kind of cool it off a little bit.
Makes sense.
It makes it a little bit faster and easier to work with, I've noticed. So that's just what I've
So
learned.
that's good. Now on your wig here for Inuyasha, you use some different materials on that. For his ears.
Technically the ears are also a thermoplastic. This is a thermoplastic a lot of people probably don't know about. It's called Foss Shape. I got that through CosplaySupplies.com. It looks like felt. It's a white felt. It comes in two different thicknesses. This was the thinner one. And again, you heat it up like you would a thermoplastic, and it doesn't hold its rigidity like a real plastic would, but you can definitely form it into a shape. And it's good for, like, I don't know if I would do it this way again necessarily,
But for your first time working with
it was
something
good
like
for
that.
this, because like the ears are the Foss shape, and then the pink part is liquid latex, and then I had some extra wefts for the wig laying around that I had bought, and I cut some of that hair and glued it on with tacky glue. So that's what the ears are made out of.
So that's cool. So what are some other materials or safety precautions? Or you guys have gloves that you use sometimes?
I do not. The only gloves I've ever used were like vinyl gloves occasionally, but I hardly ever use those. Like right now, I think I still have some paint for my hands from last night.
Yeah.
But I rarely use gloves. Now with thermoplastics, they do get hot. Thermal
Obviously.
heat. But typically speaking, they're not too hot to handle unless you overheat them.
Right.
I do have these silicone fingertip things I bought at Joann's for like $2 that I sometimes use because Thibra especially wants to hold your fingerprints if you touch it when it's hot. And if you don't want your fingerprints showing on something, it's
Obviously.
good for that. But honestly, they don't really want to stay on my fingers, so I don't use them that often. Unless I really don't want my fingerprints to show on whatever it is I'm doing. But, respirator, make sure you cut away from yourself when you're
Obviously.
cutting things. I mean, love it.
X-Acto knives and utility knives are really good for that.
Heat knives. I have a heat knife, and I don't use it for a lot, but I have used it. It's a good tool to have. I don't personally own a soldering iron, but I've heard that those are also good tools to have if in your cosplay arsenals.
Some people like Dremels for various
Yes,
things.
I need a Dremel really bad. A rotary tool.
The problem with a lot of Dremels is the pieces break so easy. You have to get a really good quality one.
Yeah, I want an actual Dremel.
Yeah, you need a really, really good one because the pieces are so thin on a lot of them that if you go to try to cut something or do something with it, they just break. So you have to be real careful about
Some
that.
people, if you're into more of the prop making aspect of things, they actually get into like the big power tools, like jigsaws and band sanders and
Yeah, you need a good garage setup for all
you
that.
you'd need room for all that. So like if you live in an apartment or something, you're not gonna be able to do that. But
Obviously.
Okay, well, was there any other special... well, one of the things I was just sitting here noticing was your holster. It's actually cloth,
Yeah.
which I thought was kind of cool. And you sewed it.
Yeah, I just took some old. I think it was actually part of our friend's Jedi costume.
yeah, it was part of that
actually.
tunic.
And
Some
I just took
scraps.
some scrap pieces from that. I took a belt buckle off of an old belt that I didn't need anymore. And I just cut these to the shapes I needed to hold my blasters, and now I can actually pretty much use these for any type of holster that I might need to, because it can pretty much conform to a lot of different costumes.
Right, and that's useful too, because if you can get something that you can use for more than one cosplay,
Definitely.
that's also very useful.
Like wigs, for example. Wigs are a great example of that. They're a wonderful investment to make. Like, I'm about to buy one for my Lady Sif costume, and her hair is basically just brown, long, and wavy. You can use that for a lot of different characters.
Exactly.
So if it's not something like Inuyasha that's very specific, you can use a lot of wigs for multiple characters. So that $35 or maybe $50 that you would spend is actually a good investment for the future.
Right, so, anytime you can find something that's useful for more than one thing. And we talked about this in another episode, too, about stockpiling pieces and parts and other things that you find that just might be useful for something in the future. At yard sales, flea markets, dollar stores, any place that you find anything that could be useful for a costume or cosplay or prop or something. You guys picked up a whole box full of plastic weapons one time.
For $5.
For $5. And
I still got that in my garage.
And you did use one already for a costume, did you not?
A couple of them, yeah.
Right. And you had to modify them a little bit or cut away pieces or paint them or something. But $5 and you have all these different weapons and there's pieces there that you can use for other things. Or we bought, the insulation and you still have pieces downstairs that can be used for other stuff. Or that plastic that we bought that we paid $1 for. We talked about in another episode where we found all that conduit for $1, a big huge box of it. Could be used for a board costume or for a lot of other types of things that look conduity. So basically anywhere that you can find anything that could possibly be used as pieces and parts down the road, or if you're getting ready to throw something out, instead of throwing it out, think about it.
Use this in the
Think
future?
about it. Could it be something that maybe I can use? Have a little box, that you store under a bed or on a closet shelf or someplace that my cosplay stuff, and then you can rummage through it, and when you're thinking about your next costume, you go, hey, this could be useful. I can use this. We pick up a cloth shower thing sometimes, shower curtains that we can cut down and make pieces of costumes and stuff out of. a lot of times, or pieces of sheets. The Yasha costume is actually made out of a sheet.
It is.
And
I went and bought a flat sheet from Walmart.
that color of sheet, and it was a whole lot cheaper than buying
the cloth from
buying the
Joann's.
cloth. You know, so
I do want to mention a couple things for beginner cosplayers that I did not know starting out. So just some tips from someone who's been doing it for a couple of years. There is an app out there that is a wonderful resource. You can get it either on the Google Play Store or the iPhone equivalent, whatever that is. It's called Cosplanner, COSPLANNER. It is a wonderful resource, and it's a free app, but you can pay like $1 to have like a whole bunch of extra space within the app, and it's worth the $1, trust me. You can have reference pictures. You can organize your cosplays as far as planned, in progress, or things that are complete. You can set a budget for yourself. You can put things in there that you need to buy, need to make. You can have
Put
reference
notes.
pictures, notes, pictures of progress pictures. Like I use it a lot for progress pictures and reference pictures. It's great for that. It's good for keeping track of your budget.
It's good for keeping track of what you've done and what you still need to do. That way you don't forget something.
Exactly.
That's something I'm really bad at.
And you can set a timeline. Like, we're going to a convention in July, so I know I need this done by a certain date.
Right.
And I know when I look at that app, I can go and look, okay, I only have 4 months left. I need to get cracking.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. Also, cosplaytutorial.com is a wonderful resource to look up. Not always YouTube videos. Sometimes they're written descriptions, so it kind of depends on how you best learn things. So if you're better at reading descriptions of things, it can be good for that. It will also sometimes send you to YouTube videos. YouTube obviously is a wonderful source, and I specifically recommend a girl named Mango Sirene. She is a fantastic resource. She does a series on YouTube called Cosplay 101. And she has some tips and tricks for beginners, and I have watched every episode probably multiple times. She is a wonderful, bubbly personality, and I just love sitting and hearing her talk. Mm-hmm. There's also Amazon Mandy. She's also on YouTube. She doesn't do as many of the tutorials, but she's also kind of fun to just sit and listen to. And on Tumblr, they're both on Tumblr as well as Instagram and Facebook.
And that's another important thing too. If you're not sure how you want to do something, if you just want ideas, YouTube or the internet in general is a great resource for that.
Google that stuff.
Yeah, just Google it, and it will pop up with stuff from all types of different websites.
And it'll help get your creative juices flowing and help you think about things, help you think about alternative ways to do stuff. And the more you get into it, the more you might want to, get into more of the complicated things or the more complicated materials. But you can start out with the stuff that's a little easier or cheaper to come by, and it could just show you all kinds of stuff. So the internet's a wonderful resource for that. Mm-hmm. And that's mostly what this little special was kind of about, just to let you know how we've gone about doing some different cosplay, some of the pitfalls you might run into, some of the best ways to do stuff, but mostly it's just what makes you happy. Mm-hmm. You find a character that you want to do and find the best way to make it work, and then you can be proud of what you've managed to do and keep it, because you can reuse costumes. You don't have to use them the first time and be done with them. You can often go to 2 or 3 years later, do one again, or sometimes get together with your friends and have a multiple cosplay of one you've already made, or sometimes people come up with ones that they do together for a specific con. You've done that a couple of times. Mm-hmm. So I think that's mostly what we wanted to say this time. We thank you very much for watching this special.
If you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. If you like what we do, subscribe, and feel free to leave us some comments below.
Thanks.